It'll probably be fine.
It'll probably be fine. Hello, welcome to So We're Watching That Right, a podcast where two lesbians bully each other for having the same taste in anime. I'm Becky, scientifically certified best girl.
And I'm Val, everyone's favorite harem protagonist.
Feature episode time! With the new format, we thought it'd be fun to not just do like current anime and throwback anime, but to have the odd like more sort of discussion thematic episode. We'll probably do like one of these a season. And today, to kick that off, we're going to broach the deep lore and talk about how we got into anime in the first place. But we do have a couple of shows to finish off talking about that we weren't able to on either our previous episodes this season. Starting with You and I Are Polar Opposites, the feel-good show to end all feel-good shows. I want to try to pin down a little bit what makes this show so special. And it's about the character's ability to communicate. You know, it's a high school rom-com. These are Japanese high school teenagers in very classic molds. But although there is lots of miscommunication, it's not a comedy of miscommunication the way that a lot of Japanese teen rom-coms are. So, the kind of kick-off incident for the whole show is Suzuki's friends are kind of teasing her about her interest in Tani. And Tani overhears and gets upset. And Yamada, the friend who's been teasing her, realizes that he screwed up and tells Suzuki to go and chase him. You know, you have to go and talk to him now and make amends.
Yep.
And then in episode 11, something that I think is the end point for which that's the beginning in some ways. There's a scene where Nishi, the very shy girl who is developing feelings for Yamada, is talking to her bestie Honda. And Honda is trying to encourage her to spend time with Yamada. It's saying, yeah, go on, you should spend some time with him. And Nishi's like, but if I spend time with him, then you'll be all on your own. And Honda doesn't have much patience for this. But then Nishi admits that she's just fishing for excuses, which is one, love the honesty. Two, I think there's a real merit to a show about teenagers showing that they can have that kind of two-level cognition going on.
Yeah.
That we sometimes deny to fictional teenagers.
It's definitely, there's an awareness that teens are adults being formed.
Yes.
That is not present in a lot of stories.
Yeah.
That makes it feel a lot more relatable and realistic about being a teen. Because a lot of teens will be single-minded about a lot of stuff, but they will also be, little cowards about things because they're still not adults and haven't gotten used to fully owning all of their actions.
Yeah, in a way it's we get a lot of shows where teens do a lot of spiraling out of angst about their relationships. But what this accomplishes is to make it so the spirals sometimes, inconsistently, break through into reflection in this really patchy adolescent way, like you said. And I think a lot of it too is that the misunderstandings aren't generally allowed to pile up. You know, the misunderstanding will happen or the miscommunication will happen, but the characters will deal with it in flow. Rather than it being a whole build-up to a climax. It doesn't quite have that same, dramatic TV structure.
Yeah, it's definitely if you compare it to other stuff like your Kimi ni Todokes or whatever.
Yes, it's hard not to think immediately of Kimi ni Todoke as being at the opposite extreme of this.
Yeah, it just feels like these kids are savvy enough and have been, watching enough stuff happen around them and in media they consume to be okay, we should probably talk about stuff instead of letting it build up to drama.
Yes.
And it feels like that's probably the healthiest way that they could do everything, even if it is, Nishi's still awkward and afraid of putting off Yamada and all this.
Yeah.
They are still being teens, even if they're really smart about it.
Yeah, and I think we made this point last season in one of our episodes, that I think there's a real value to the teenagers who might watch this show of having a show that models good behavior, right? In a way that so many of these shows, they're very good at portraying the problems. Very, very good at bringing the angst and the self-doubt to life. but they don't have the complementary aspect of that. It's like, well, here's how you deal with it.
Yeah.
And although that, the lack of the dramatic structure, sometimes that means it feels a bit unfocused, right? Like the couples are just sort of toddling along.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels more slice of lifey, and sometimes you don't get the big payoffs that you want. But because of it, it's got that slice of life rhythm to it. It's got room to have a lot of really good non-romantic moments as well. Two that really stick with me. There's a scene fairly early on where Suzuki goes out late one evening, like completely not dressed up and not doing any of her usual like gyaru, like glamour stuff, to the local convenience store to just get something or other. And she runs into a couple of her friends, and they're just like hanging out in their town late at night because that's what you do when you're kids. And that's a delight. And then after the school festival, where there's been a bunch of drama with some of Suzuki's middle school friends coming to visit them at the festival, there's a scene of them just like hanging out in the kiddie park late one evening. And again, like it's a very real thing. And other shows do that, but this show really kind of lands that vibe. And, any time that a show gets nostalgic for childhood, I'm wary. Like, my back is instantly up. But this feels so different to Persona 4. Like, Persona 4 perfectly typifies why I'm suspicious of that. But I think here, I feel okay with it, if that makes sense. The trap, I think, is that I wish I'd had more of this kind of experience as a teen. But because I was always like spatially a bit distant from any of my friends, it was hard to just spontaneously hang out with anyone.
Yeah, that's kind of the trouble I had too. Like I was in the suburbs ostensibly, but I was living in basically the woods.
Yeah.
I had like one friend who was within walking distance.
Yeah. In a way, I'm really devastated for you, particularly that was the case, because seeing photos that you've shown me of that area, it feels like there's an alternate world line in which you were like out in the woods with a group of mates all the time, late at night, having all the teen hijinks.
Yeah. Fun fact, which you can probably edit out. I had a couple friends in my like actual neighborhood that weren't like a 20-minute walk away, but the problem was my street was basically filled with summer homes for people who could afford to have summer homes.
Yeah.
And the funniest bit for me is that when I was in online high school, for my first year of high school, before I, failed the year and had to go back to regular high school, I'm pretty sure one of the girls who had a summer home on that street was in my class. I never got confirmation on that, but
oh, America is so fucking bleak. Anyway, we're not done with talking about this show because there's going to be a season 2 next season, which I am so fired up for, because literally none of the relationships get like fully paid off in the first season. And it's like, there are 3 main relationships. There's Suzuki and Tani, who are framed as being like the main relationship. Then there's Yamada and Nishi and Taira and Azuma. And like the thing that I think is really interesting is, the show is you and I are polar opposites. It's not you and I are incompatible. Like so many rom-coms that are just straight rom-coms.
Emphasis on straight.
Yes. The reason that they end at the moment the couple gets together is because they don't really have any interesting ideas for what that relationship is like. Like, the relationship itself is the happily ever after bit.
I think that's biased towards your view on anime adaptations, because a lot of them do continue on past that. They just don't get adapted.
True. Sorry, yes. Yeah, that is true. But I'm also thinking about just like Western romance stories as well.
That's true.
And there's a genealogic relationship there where some of the norms of Japanese TV come from having been like large-scale culturally re-engineered by America in like 40s, 50s, 60s. But this is a show about, particularly for Suzuki and Tani, the difficulties of having very different personalities and very different forms of socialization and still trying to like share time and spend time. And although Yamada and Nishi have a more kind of conventional, they're shy, they kind of like each other, they're really struggling to work up the courage to do anything about it kind of vibe, it's the same thing. And the thing that makes it really work is how kind and attentive Yamada is about it.
Yeah, he is a Labrador with emotional intelligence, and it's...
Well, I think the secret is that he's not a Labrador, he's a Golden Retriever. Like, that's the difference to me.
We're arguing about the dog breed, but he's a puppy.
He's got that dog in him, but we don't know which dog.
He's a mutt.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And then there's Tyra and Azuma, who just bring me so much joy, and I'm gutted that we're never going to quite get the full payoff from them, but they're so good.
Yeah, of course they bring you so much joy. Tyra's me.
Oh, God. In the very last episode, there's a moment where, like, Tyra is almost letting his happiness show, and the camera zooms out, and Azuma is next to him, and she just has the smuggest grin. And I need to be able to channel that energy.
Shut up.
It's so good.
You don't need that. You don't. I promise.
I do. I really do.
You're doing fine, okay? Shut up.
I love you.
I love you too.
Despite the fact that the next show on the docket is Outbreak Company.
Listen, I warned you.
You did warn me. You absolutely warned me. So, the core concept here is a classic anime protagonist, Neat Otaku, gets press-ganged into service of the Japanese government to front a soft power invasion of a fantasy world that's basically like, export Cool Japan to this fantasy world. And there's a lot to get into about this because it's really like fascinating to look at it coming as it did at the end of the Cool Japan period as a reflection on Cool Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have an attachment to this show that I don't because you've read the light novels, right?
I had an attachment to this show even before I read the light novels, but yes.
And the light novels changed things.
Well, the show changed things from the light novels, yes.
Sorry, yes. Yeah. I can English.
So, probably the most important thing with the tone of this is that he gets isekai'd by the Japanese government, and the entire show's arc is basically he gets accused of being an invader, which he is, doesn't process that at all for 6 episodes because there are other things going on.
Yes.
Then comes back to that and goes, actually, we're going to start producing otaku culture in the isekai setting with their norms for stuff, so it's fine. Which, that's volume 2. And the 6 intervening episodes were volume 3 and 4, which really throws off the whole fucking vibe.
Yeah, you told me that this morning. I was like, what? Because I think I would have had a way more positive response to that middle stuff if it had happened after the invasion element had been resolved.
Yeah, turns out that's how it was.
Yeah, and like to really like capture what's going on with Shinichi in that arc is specifically the people who call him an invader are
hardline nationalists.
They're hardline nationalists, but they are also violent terrorists.
Yeah.
Right? Which, as a, an ordinary citizen of a liberal democratic nation...
Ostensibly.
Liberal democratic question mark, but like with this show being like 15-ish, the source material being like 15-ish years old, it's understandable for a kid to be attacked by terrorists and think, well, the terrorists are evil, so they can't be right about me being an invader.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do get these 6 episodes of like isekai shenanigans, harem kind of shenanigans. And that stuff really does have a lot of heart. Like the relationship between Shinichi and Musil, the relationship between Shinichi and Petralka, who are absolute opposite ends of this status scale, but are both
smitten really hard.
Well, smitten, but also it's a feudal world that has these very tightly defined roles, particularly for women. And Shinichi offers them an escape from that is not just, what if a cute boy liked you?
Yeah. There's the entire thing of like, he has to explain modern concepts of equality to them.
Yes.
Because that's a lot of otaku culture is ostensibly based on. And it's interesting to bring that up in like a really early thing. And Petralka does not get it.
No.
And Musil doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And then Musil saves Petralka from the terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And Petralka has a change of heart about some stuff. But yeah, no, it really is very, very different to have Volume 2, like, directly after the opening pitch of Volume 1, where they introduce the premise, have the second one go, actually, you're too annoying to the Japanese government. We're going to dispose of you, and have people already fluent enough in the Japanese language to pull off the scheme where Petrolka is listening in on the meeting.
Yes.
And everyone is supportive enough of Shinichi to keep him alive during that ordeal.
Yeah. And like, this is where I think we get into the substance of the thing, right? Which is, this is a show made in Japan, produced and published and distributed by companies that are the engines of Japanese soft power, critiquing Japanese soft power. And that puts it in the kind of have your cake and eat it territory of self-critical media, or media that criticizes its own genre or form. So other examples are things like Spec Ops: The Line for military shooters, Danganronpa V3 for, I guess, like death games, the kind of very character-centric mode of visual novel kind of fandom and so on.
Yeah. It's also interesting in the light novel specifically, because this is stuff from way later into the series than the anime was ever going to get to. But I feel like the anime was definitely hampered by them definitely knowing they were only getting one season, as much as the actors were joking about, oh, if you like our show a lot, buy our stuff and you can get a season 2.
Yeah.
Because they probably could have like done a teaser for Hikaru, who is the trans character that shows up basically directly after the series ends. And they also like weren't ever going to get to the US involvement in this world, which is really interesting and funny. But basically what I want to say is just like the anime is definitely fixated on the premise and how far that extends to like the end of where it got to. We're like, okay, we've proven that we can ingratiate ourselves and it's actually fine that we want to produce stuff. So it comes off a lot less, you know, aware of what they're doing in the anime.
Yeah. I think also the anime suffers a little bit from like, well, I don't know. You can tell me whether the light novels are also like this. The anime felt like there was an element of it where various like artists and directors were taking advantage of the concept and theming to like kind of indulge in the very thing that they were criticizing.
That is very much the anime. There are a lot of like in-jokes from the director of the show. I feel like to a degree that is noticeable but not definable if you aren't aware of the staff.
Yeah.
Which is probably what you're picking up on.
Yeah.
But I was actually going to say the whole soft power thing is actually really funny because very late in the light novel, a particular warship from the American Navy gets isekai'd into this world, and it's the USS Nimitz, star of the film The Final Countdown, which is about a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier that travels through time to the day before Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Anyway, everyone working on that ship is apparently a fan of that film in the book, and Shinichi does his best to communicate with the people on the ship when he has to, like, get in touch with them by doing a Darth Vader impression.
What?
Which is actually perfect for a series about soft power.
Yeah, no kidding. Jesus Christ. But I want to, like, crack a can of worms, but try not to let any of the worms get out before we wrap up on this one. So, as the show presents it, the Japanese government's scheme is not just to like use Eldon as an emerging market for Japanese exports, but also to destabilize the Eldon Empire by kind of throttling the supply.
Yeah.
To introduce kind of competition for Japanese culture.
Yeah. Basically, I think the stated plan in both the anime and the light novel is just like, well, if we can get them dependent on us enough, we can leverage access to our culture for access to their material wealth.
Yes.
And technology, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's mostly just like, there's a shit ton of stuff we could mine.
Yeah.
And as Japan, the smallest major nation in the running for stuff, we kind of need the space and the materials.
There is a reason why 2 separate Japanese learning apps that I've used have both taught me a phrase to the effect of Japan does not have a lot of natural resources.
Woof.
I think that is a fairly big part of like Japanese national identity. It's like we make do without having like massive reserves of metals.
Yeah, this is also probably going to come up if and when we watch Gate, because that is a lot more hoorah about the whole thing.
That doesn't surprise me from like the title of Gate.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, there's definitely an element of like Japan trying to destabilize Eldent. And the reason this leaves me a little bit uncomfortable is that this resolution, this solution where people in Eldent are going to make their own manga and presumably anime and stuff as well, although they don't have the technological infrastructure for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess what they need to do is recruit Rosamine from Bookworm. But like, there is very little engagement with the negative side of the bits of Japanese culture that are being exported, right? We get Shinichi teaching them lessons about gender and class equality and stuff. But every time he or any of the other people who are teaching at the school are communicating things that are genuinely like forms of misogyny that are in Japanese culture, it's a joke.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of that is added by the anime, but it's been a bit since I read the original, so I can't be 100%.
And to be clear, the jokes are funny. Like, I'm not saying the jokes are bad jokes. I'm just saying, like, there is ultimately a very typical failure to examine the gender politics.
Yeah.
For a show that seems to have ambitions to examine itself. It's noticeable what it doesn't examine. But, you know, ultimately, this is a show that was made after the fall of Cool Japan. You know, the light novels start being published right around the end of Cool Japan as a moment. And as with any Japanese cultural export that is even vaguely reflective about Japanese culture and the engines of Japanese culture, it's really valuable for those of us in the West because we are told so often that there is no reflectivity in the anime industry. It's like, it's here. It's in this show. It's right there.
Yeah. And it's also like, when we say this is a show about the Japanese government exerting soft power to invade another world, they say it.
Yes.
Like, that is not a, we are reading into this. Like, this series, even the show, ends with Matsuba going, yeah, we're gonna invade using this soft power.
Yep.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, the voice of the Japanese government in this show says, we're doing a soft power invasion. And then we get some episodes that deal with some of the problems of that. And, you know, this is definitely at the end of the period of like the development of my interest in anime. I don't know if yours is similar or yours was a bit later.
We'll get to it.
Before we do, though, a couple of very brief mentions. We're still watching A Certain Magical Index, which, like, you were kind of reluctant to show it to me because of other people we know have said things about it. So far, and we're only about halfway through the first season, so far I have been really engaged by the world building, by the way this show thinks about Christianity. I have completely lost track of a lot of the kind of details of what's going on, particularly in terms of like the metaphysics of Index's existence and what exactly she is and why her life is in danger.
We have, it's kind of a lot to have lost track of when that's the entire thing that we've watched so far.
Yeah. But also, I mean, it's intricate is the thing. Maybe even more so than like a Chaika or a Scrap Princess. It has a magic system intricacy that I really appreciate. And yeah, like you've told me that there's rockier material later on that I might be less intrigued by, but I'm enjoying it so far.
I mean, we're coming out of the like volume 1 introductory bit, so we'll see how long the enthusiasm lasts, I guess.
Speaking of how long will the enthusiasm last?
Yeah, we can segue like that.
Yeah, we're still watching To Love Ru, which, you know, I was not ever in any doubt about Val being reluctant to show me this one, and I fully accept that I bullied you into it, and I deserve to reap the results of that. And, like, mostly it's fine. Like, it has some good recurring bits. My current favorite is Lulu's brother just, like, walking into scenes at random. Like, he's always just there.
I don't know.
Whenever it would be funny for him to arrive.
That's not her name. It's Lala.
Lala. I was sort of close.
And also, Zustine is not her brother, just her head of the royal guard.
I thought he was her brother.
I'm pretty sure he's not.
Oh, well. Anyway, yeah, it's mostly fine, but in the last episode we watched, Lala came back from space with a space warping refrigerator full of live giant squid, and the show... So I looked at the dates earlier, and I was surprised at how late To Love Ru is. I thought it was a late 90s thing, but it's like 2006 to 8, kind of. And that was really surprising to me, because that period is when I was like most in kind of the webcomics scene. every webcomic that I read that had a chance to do that joke did that joke. Almost shot for shot. And they didn't get it from Delivery because the timeline doesn't work out for that. So there must be a source text for that.
Tentacles have been around for a while, yes.
Yeah, but like it made me grimace because I don't think it's a good joke. But
the actual joke of that scene is good, which is all of the seafood starts getting into a fucking fist fight.
Yeah. The bit where like she's brought this magic fridge back so that she can cook for, I'm going to get this wrong. What's his name?
Guess. You want to get it wrong? Get it wrong.
Is it Rito?
Yeah!
Right. In my head, it was either Toya or Toma, which are other shows.
Other shows, yep.
But yeah, Rito. I got there eventually. Rito challenges her to cook for him, and so she goes off to like harvest the galaxy for ingredients, and she comes back with this magic fridge. There's a bunch of giant cephalopods in there. They're supposed to be like frozen. Something happens, they start unfreezing, and they climb out of the fridge. And they start grabbing various teens and like getting into a fight while holding the teens, but also it takes very great care to show you the like hints of sexual assault going on in that we could really do without. And like, yes, I get that there's a tradition, but also stop.
Tell that to them fucking 20 years ago.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm also still watching Fang of the Sun Dugram, but I haven't actually had a chance to watch it in a little while. Let us talk a bit about how we got into anime. So, I have a very specific story that I want to tell because it's absurd. What were the first anime that you can remember watching?
So, there are a few answers I could have to this question, so I'll go through them in order. As a young boy, when I was a real small idiot, I, watched cartoons while at my grandparents' house. One of those was Dragon Ball Z, which is like, okay, yeah, that's going to be a lot of people's first anime, even if they don't consider it anime at that point. Here's where I throw in the curveball. It's going to really...
Oh? Because we've talked about this before, and I don't remember any curveballs.
Yeah, no, I remembered a curveball that I could throw in.
Oh?
My dad, we've always been like a tech-savvy family, and my dad, I remember when I was younger, like it was before the turn of the century, I'm pretty sure, had found like this anime pirate website.
Wow.
And had downloaded some stuff and was watching it. And I'm pretty sure I watched like an episode or two of Devilman over his shoulder.
Wow.
I am pretty sure I watched an episode of fucking something over his shoulder. I can't give you an actual like name attached to that, but he watched some stuff on there. And I was just like, huh, what's that? And he didn't stop me from watching, so some bullshit probably happened in it.
That's incredible.
And then, like, time passed. I eventually got to the point where I was in, like, high school. I had a middle school friend the same middle school friend who, like, got me into Tales of Symphonia when I went over to his house for the first time.
Special thank you to that friend of yours, because Tales and anime is kind of how we met.
Yeah, I'm sure he's doing fine. And it was a lot of just like, okay, well, we're going to have a sleepover and we're going to watch Adult Swim until whatever fucking hour of the morning that we fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I think probably it was FMA and Fooly Cooly that were in that grouping. But the funniest thing was like, he later was like, hey, you figured out how to do torrenting. Can you download all of Dragon Ball Z for me? I will pay you. So I had him buy me like a spindle of DVDs, and I downloaded all of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball GT, and I burned them, and then he gave me like $100 for it.
Dang, nice.
And I was just like, cool. In the process of doing that, I discovered a now defunct fan subbing group, which was like kind of on the early end of modern fan subs before, Crunchyroll went insane and started ruining fan subbing for everyone by legitimizing everything. And it was Mazui Subs. And I think, their website is still up. But I basically came across them while they were doing... Actually, there's more answers to this. Because, like, there were a lot of eras in my life where, like, I kind of got back into anime, but then didn't commit to anything. The one where it really stuck was Mazuri was subbing Kyoka as it came out.
Ah, right, yes.
And after that, I got into anime proper. There was also an intervening section where I watched a lot of stuff that was uploaded on YouTube before the Wild West of copyright got settled with the MCAs. And
Yeah.
I watched To Love Ru entirely on Daily Motion, I think.
Wow. God. So was Hyoka kind of like the turning point then? I'm into anime now.
Hyoka was definitely the point where I was just like, oh, this is a piece of media that has artistic value that should be taken seriously, even if not all the time. Because like before that, I was watching other stuff that I could find on like the Pirate Bay.
Yeah.
But after that, I was just like, oh god, this is actually really good and thoughtful. I should look into stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then the year after that, Snafu aired, and I was like, well, I'm fucked now.
Yes. Well, there are reasons that we are definitely going to have special episodes about both those shows.
Yeah. Also, like, 2012 was when I met Proxy, where we bonded because we found each other talking about Mirai Nikki and how bad it was. So 2012 was a big year.
So, like, last question for you. It sounds like this was a fairly gradual thing for you of, like, you watched cartoons and then you came to understand that some of the cartoons were, like, quote-unquote anime, and that was a very gradual understanding of the difference. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because for me, I really didn't have that. Mostly because I didn't really watch a lot of cartoons at all. My parents were pretty anti-TV, and so I didn't watch cartoons very much. So I don't know that I ever necessarily watched any anime as a kid. I do remember having some friends who were into Dragon Ball and would talk about Dragon Ball a bunch. But I also remember that I didn't really understand that it was a TV show. Like, I understood that there was a TV show, but I think I thought that the, like, source material was like a collectible card game or something.
That's...
Yeah, like, I think this is revealing not just about, like, my experience, but also about some of the ways of talking about particular anime that existed at that time. Because a couple of years later, the same thing happened with Evangelion, where I was in college. This is sixth form college, so 16 to 18. And for the first time, I was hanging out with other nerds in person because there were a group of nerds who had this one particular corner of the college site where they would hang out and play Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or both. And like I just started hanging out with them because you could just go to that place and be there. And so that was my introduction to a lot of nerd stuff. But there were a couple of guys there who were into anime, and they talked endlessly about Evangelion. And again, I didn't really twig that the source of it was the TV show. I think actually what I got was almost like the Gundam thing of it is a TV show, but it's also a toy line, right? It's about collectibles. And a lot of my understanding of what anime meant initially was about that sense of kind of the merchandising aspect of the culture, even though none of us were buying merch of anime at that time because it wasn't available. Like you couldn't get a lot of that stuff in the UK. And also we couldn't have afforded it if you could. Anyway, sometime in 2004, those two guys who wouldn't shut up about Evangelion, I went round to one of their houses and the other one came around as well. And we watched some anime. And the watch schedule for that day truly outdoes any absurdity that we have subjected ourselves to together.
So far.
We watched the Ghost in the Shell movie because I'd heard of that. And then, because like they told me a bunch of stories in that kind of slightly mythic mode that teens have of like bragging to one another, they told me a bunch of stories about experiences they'd had exploring the anime that was available. Also, I should add, one of these guys was very dyslexic, so he couldn't read subtitles, so everything was dubbed. And everything was the official releases as well. Nobody was pirating anything. But they told me a bunch of stories about how extreme anime could be, how like edgy and stuff. And, Ghost in the Shell is major art and certainly has some grody stuff in it with the way it plays with embodiment and so on. But then I was putting on a bit of bravado and I said, show me the worst thing you got. And they showed me an episode of Excel Saga, which I later watched the entirety of Excel Saga. It is a deeply excessive, incoherent piece of work. But the episode they showed me, episode 26, was not part of the televised run. In fact, it was deliberately made 1 minute too long for a TV slot because the whole point of it is they were doing everything they knew they wouldn't have been allowed to broadcast. And I actually rewatched it a few hours ago to see how accurate my memory was, and it is disconcertingly accurate for something I last watched over 20 years ago. But yeah, it's absurd. It really is, and it's grotesque. And they were also that day introducing me to drinking real ale, which is, nowadays in America, there's like craft beer. Real ale is a bit like the British equivalent of that, except that instead of it being about like new boutique breweries, it's about preserving old kind of classic breweries more. And so they were introducing me to real ale, and I was drinking a beer called Old Peculiar, which is sort of mythologized as having other intoxicants in besides the alcohol itself. Like, it's noted for making you feel extra weird. So that was a cocktail of experiences. And then we watched the first 3 or 4 episodes of Evangelion, because that was the one they would never shut up about. And the first 3 or 4 episodes of Evangelion do not give you any idea why teen boys would never shut up about it, because they're the most conventional bit. Very straightforwardly lifting a bunch of stuff from Gundam, for example. But they are good anime. And then we might have watched a couple of other things in there, like an episode or 2. But we finished up by watching, I think, maybe as many as 6 episodes of Ranma 1/2, which to me, as a deeply closeted trans lesbian at the time, you can imagine what that did to me.
Made you feel funnier than the ale.
Yeah, man, it stuck with me a long time. So that was my induction into anime. And it really did mean that my impression of anime was not really mediated by any continuity with Western cartoons at all. Because my knowledge of Western cartoons was mostly like Disney movies.
Yeah.
And for me, it was part of it kind of exploring a nerd identity. I was getting into Magic. I was getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! As the card game. These guys were also... The guy whose house it was also the guy who GM'd some of the first tabletop games that I was ever in.
That sounds right.
So a lot of it was about me like trying to strongly self-identify as a nerd. And then I went up to university and I joined all the nerd societies. There was at the time, fairly new and very active anime society. And that was run by what we then called fangirls, Fujoshi. And it was a much queerer space than I'd ever been in before. There were people who were openly and flamboyantly gay. And that was the first time I ever cross-dressed, was in an event that we went to as part of the Anime Society. So that was a space of self-exploration. I watched a lot of the queerer bits of anime that were available at the time, the BL and stuff. And that was where I found most of my long-lasting friendships. And so I then was sharing houses with other people who were anime nerds. And that's how I got into JRPGs, because they played JRPGs and I saw the JRPGs and that was good. And all of that produced this kind of hyperfixation on Japanese culture, which, definitely had an element of Orientalism in it. But the thing that really captured me was like how different structurally Japanese science fiction and fantasy thinks about its world building to the West, because the West is so wedded to ideas of like realism and grittiness and kind of sense making. You should always be able to like understand the system.
Kind of the same, line of design intent / interest that gets us to the lore fondness, I think.
Yeah.
That admittedly, because most of the jokes about lore tubers are about Souls games, is about JP Media anyway, but...
Well, that is the ongoing and fascinating battle about, to what extent the Souls games are Western influenced, right? Because they are Western influenced. Like, Miyazaki is a huge Tolkien fan, and all the major Souls luminaries have read Tolkien, and I've been listening to a Game Studies Buddies podcast where they're reading through the Tolkien books, and they keep going, oh, wait, this is just in one of the Souls games.
Yeah, and there's also the stuff where, like, Miyazaki would look at stuff that he couldn't understand in English as a young kid, and then adapted the ideas that he saw there into ideas for Souls and Elden Ring stuff.
So yeah, like the encyclopedic mode of appreciating genre fiction that prevails in the West something that we owe maybe not to Tolkien himself, but to like the Tolkien estate.
Mm.
The way that Christopher Tolkien particularly built this institution of like Middle Earth that gets us to kind of fan wiki culture and so on. And that exists in Japan. Like, fans still respond to stuff that way in Japan. But in the West, publishers of specfic have very strict norms, or did certainly for the second half of the 20th century, about what a fantasy world has to look like, what a sci-fi world has to look like. And the Japanese media that I love most is the media that looks least like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is why Denocoil is my favorite anime, because it's like, it's a cyberpunk show, but it looks like a kid's show. Okay, it would be really, really hard to have done that in Western TV when I was a teenager. So, like, that's how I ended up so fixated on Japanese media.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I have ended up as a trans lesbian is very, very funny, given that when I first started going round to those two friends' houses to watch anime with them, my mother, because she had only heard of anime and manga in the context of discussions of BL, assumed that meant I was gay. And, like, she wasn't entirely wrong, let's be real.
Yeah, all your fucking college friends transitioned at this point. Would it be a gay again?
Some of them have.
Good.
It was a very, very queer scene, albeit in the, like, deeply problematic 4chan something awful kind of mode of the second half of the noughties.
Mm-hmm.
The less said about that, the better. So, Watching That Right is a project of Slimebug Productions. Intro and outro music is by me, graphics are by Val. You can find us on Blue Sky at slimebug.peacecut.social, YouTube at youtube.com/slimebugproductions, Patreon at patreon.com/slimebugproductions. Download all episodes from Libsyn at slimebug.pro, and join our Discord via the link in the description. Thanks for listening, and until next time, may anime neither betray nor disappoint you.